My name is Dorothy Hayes, and I am 73 years old. I've lived a full life full of love, heartache, hard lessons, and eventually, peace. But nothing prepared me for the phone call I received last Tuesday afternoon. "We're leaving tomorrow, Amo," my daughter Amanda said, her voice tight and businesslike. "Your beach house has already been sold. We need you out by the weekend." I stood there in my kitchen, the phone pressed against my ear, sunlight streaming through the windows of the little cottage I'd moved to 5 years ago. The beach house. Our beach house. The place where I'd raised Amanda, where her father and I had built our dreams. "Amanda, sweetheart," I said slowly, keeping my voice steady. "I think you've forgotten something." There was a pause. "What are you talking about, Mother?" I smiled then, a genuine smile that came from somewhere deep inside. "The house you sold, darling. It was never yours to sell. Let me take you back. Let me tell you how we got here. 35 years ago, I married Robert Hayes. He was handsome, charming, ambitious, everything a young woman thought she wanted. We bought that beach house together when Amanda was just 2 years old. A beautiful 3-bedroom home with wide shutters and a wraparound porch, sitting just 200 feet from the ocean. Robert was a real estate developer, successful, driven, always working. And I was the wife who kept everything together. I raised our daughter. I managed the household. I smiled at his business dinners and asked for nothing. For 20 years, I asked for nothing, but Robert wanted more. Not more success, he had plenty of that. He wanted more excitement, more youth, more of what he thought he was missing. Her name was Veronica. She was 28, worked in his office, and had ambitions of her own. I found out about them 3 years into their affair, quite by accident. A receipt for a hotel room in a city where Robert claimed he was attending a solo business conference. I didn't confront him right away. I watched. I waited. I learned that patience isn't passive, it's strategic. Instead, I went to see a lawyer. A good one. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she was sharp as a tack. "Mrs. Hayes," she said after hearing my story, "before you do anything, we need to protect your assets." So I did something Robert never expected from his quiet, agreeable wife. I transferred the beach house, the one his business had purchased with both our names on the deed, solely into my name. It was legal. It was rightful. And it was done quietly, with paperwork Robert barely glanced at when I asked him to sign what I told him were refinancing documents. Then I waited some more. 2 years later, Robert came to me with divorce papers. Amanda was 19, away at college. He didn't want a scene. He wanted his freedom to marry Veronica, and he was willing to give me a reasonable settlement to make it quick and quiet. I signed the papers, took my settlement, watched him marry his young bride with her calculating eyes and practiced smile, and I moved into a smaller cottage 10 miles inland, while Amanda, now siding firmly with her father and his new wife, moved into the beach house. My beach house. Moem left it to both of us, Robert had told Amanda, lying smoothly. She wanted to downsize, and you've always loved that house. Veronica and I will split our time between there and the city apartment. Amanda believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was her father, successful and confident. And I had become invisible to her years ago. Just another middle-aged woman her father had outgrown. For 5 years, I watched from a distance. Amanda, now working in her father's company, slowly being molded into someone I barely recognized. Hard, ambitious, cold. Just like him. Robert died 8 months ago. Heart attack. Sudden. He was only 60-5. At the funeral, Amanda barely spoke to me. Veronica cried dramatically, and I stood quietly in my simple black dress, remembering the young man who'd once brought me wildflowers and promised we'd grow old together by the sea. Last month, Amanda and Veronica decided to sell the beach house. They planned to split the money and use it to expand Robert's business, now under Amanda's control. They had plans. Big plans. They just didn't have the right paperwork. What do you mean it wasn't mine to sell? Amanda's voice rose on the phone. The beach house is in my name, sweetheart. Only my name. It has been for over 15 years. Check the county records if you don't believe me. Silence. Long, stretching silence. But Dad said, your father said a lot of things, Amanda. That doesn't make them true. I heard her breathing, heard the papers rustling as she presumably checked documents, heard the moment she realized. You knew, she whispered. All this time, you knew we thought it was Dad's house, and you never said anything. I did know, I replied gently. Just like I knew about Veronica years before he asked for the divorce. Just like I knew that he was teaching you to value money over people, success over kindness. I knew a lot of things, Amanda. And I waited. Waited for what? Her voice cracked. For this moment. For you to realize that your father wasn't the hero you thought he was. For you to understand that I wasn't the weak woman you could dismiss and forget. For you to learn that actions have consequences. Another long pause. The buyers? We signed contracts. Took their deposit. Then I suggest you return their deposit and explain the mistake. The house is mine, Amanda. It always was. I heard something then. Something I hadn't heard from my daughter in years. She was crying. I'm sorry, Namoem, she said finally, her voice small and broken. I'm so sorry. For everything. For believing him. For how I treated you. For not seeing. And here's where my story could have gone dark. Where revenge could have tasted sweet. Where I could have twisted the knife and walked away. But I didn't. Amanda, I said softly, I want you to listen to me. Your father wasn't all bad. He gave me you. And for that, I'll always be grateful. But he taught you the wrong lessons. He taught you that winning matters more than honesty. That success excuses betrayal. That love is something you can trade in for a newer model. I paused, letting my words sink in. I didn't keep this house to punish you, sweetheart. I kept it because it was mine. Because I earned it through 20 years of being a good wife, a good mother, a good partner. Because I knew someday you might need to understand that real strength isn't about power or money. It's about knowing your worth and protecting it. What? What are you going to do with the house? She asked. I smiled, looking out my window at the small garden I'd cultivated over the past 5 years. I'm going to sell it, but on my terms. And I'm going to use half the money to start a foundation helping women going through divorce. Women who feel invisible and powerless. The other half. I paused for effect. The other half is yours, Amanda. For when you're ready to build something real. Something honest. Something that doesn't depend on who you can step on to get ahead. She was sobbing now. Really crying. Can I see you, M.O.M.? Can we talk? I want to. I need to. Yes, I said simply. Come to my cottage tomorrow. I'll make tea. And Amanda, bring Veronica if she wants to come. She's young still. She can learn to. When I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not triumph. Not vindication. Just peace. The beach house would be sold, yes. But this time with wisdom, not betrayal. With intention, not desperation. And maybe, just maybe, with a chance for my daughter to finally understand what her mother had been trying to teach her all along. That kindness isn't weakness. That patience isn't surrender. And that sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who's been holding all the cards. I'm Dorothy Hayes. I'm 73 years old. And I'm just getting started. The next morning, I woke early, as I always do. The sunrise painted my small cottage in shades of gold and rose, and I made myself a cup of coffee, the good kind, the expensive beans I'd started buying for myself after the divorce. Small luxuries, I'd learned, were acts of self-love. I thought about Amanda as I waited for her to arrive. My beautiful girl with her father's dark eyes and my stubborn chin. I remembered holding her as a baby in that beach house, walking the shore with her tiny hand in mine, teaching her to collect seashells and respect the ocean's power. Where had that curious, gentle child gone? When had she become so hard? I knew the answer, of course. It happened gradually, the way all transformations do. A comment here from Robert about winners and losers. A lesson there about not showing weakness. After a year of watching her father charm his way through life, seeing him rewarded for his charisma while reliable, steady Dorothy became part of the furniture. By the time she was 25, Amanda had learned to see the world through his eyes. And in that world, I was simply someone who'd failed to keep her husband interested. At 10 o'clock, I heard a car pull into my driveway. Through the window, I watched Amanda get out alone. She looked thinner than I remembered, her designer suit hanging a bit loose on her frame. Her hair was pulled back severely, and even from a distance, I could see the exhaustion in her movements. She stood by her car for a long moment, staring at my cottage like it was foreign territory. I suppose it was. She'd never visited me here. Not once in 5 years. I opened the door before she could knock. Come in, sweetheart, I said gently. She looked at me, really looked at me, and something in her face crumbled. M.O.M., she whispered, and suddenly she was crying again, right there on my doorstep. I pulled her inside, guided her to my worn but comfortable sofa, and held her while she sobbed. I didn't say anything. I just let her cry, stroking her hair the way I used to when she was small and had scraped her knee or lost a friend. When the storm finally passed, I handed her tissues and went to make tea. Chamomile with honey, the way she'd liked it as a teenager. I've been such a fool, Amanda said when I returned with the steaming cups. Her eyes were red and swollen, her careful makeup ruined. Somehow, she looked more like my daughter than she had in years. Tell me, I said simply, settling into the chair across from her, and she did. The words poured out of her like a confession. She told me about the business, how it was struggling despite appearances, how Robert had been leveraging properties and taking risky loans to maintain his image of success, how after his death she discovered debts she never knew existed. Veronica left 2 months ago, Amanda said, her voice flat. Took what she could and disappeared. Turns out she'd been skimming money from the business accounts for years. Dad either didn't notice or didn't care. Maybe both. I sipped my tea, letting her continue. I thought selling the beach house would save everything. The business, my reputation, the life Dad built. But it was all built on sand, Mom. All of it. And I was so busy trying to be like him, trying to prove I was strong and successful, that I never stopped to ask if any of it was real. She looked at me with desperate eyes. How did you know? How did you see through him when I couldn't? I set down my cup carefully. I loved your father, Amanda. I really did. But love doesn't mean being blind. I saw his flaws because I was close enough to see them, the small cruelties, the casual dishonesties, the way he'd rewrite history to suit his narrative. But I also saw his good qualities. He was funny, generous in his own way, and he did love you. He just loved his image of himself more. When did you stop loving him? I didn't stop all at once. It was gradual. Each small betrayal, each dismissal, each time he made me feel invisible, they added up. By the time I found out about Veronica, I think I was more relieved than hurt. Relieved to have a reason to finally let go. Amanda looked down at her hands. I blamed you for the divorce. Dad made it sound like you just gave up, like you weren't willing to work on the marriage. I know what he told you. Why didn't you fight back? Why didn't you tell me the truth? This was the question I'd been waiting for, the one I'd spent 5 years preparing to answer, because you weren't ready to hear it, sweetheart. You were 19, halfway through college, completely devoted to your father. If I told you about Veronica, about his lies, you would have thought I was bitter and vindictive. You would have defended him, and the rift between us would have become permanent. I leaned forward, catching her eye. I loved you too much to make you choose between us. So I chose to step back, to let you live your life, make your mistakes, learn your lessons. I chose to trust that someday, maybe not today, maybe not even this year, you would see the truth for yourself. And when you did, I wanted to still be here, ready to catch you. Fresh tears spilled down Amanda's cheeks. I wasted so much time. You learned what you needed to learn. That's not waste, sweetheart. That's life. We sat in silence for a while, drinking our tea, listening to the birds outside my window. It was peaceful, this small cottage. I'd made it a sanctuary after years of living in that big beach house, trying to fill its rooms with enough warmth to compensate for Robert's increasing absence. Mom, Amanda finally said, I don't want your money. The half you offered me. I don't deserve it. It's not about deserving. It's about me choosing to give it to you, because you're my daughter and I love you. What you do with it, that's up to you. I want to help with the foundation. The one for women going through divorce. I want to be part of that, if you'll let me. I felt warmth spread through my chest. I'd like that very much, and I want to learn from you. How to be strong without being hard. How to be kind without being weak. How to know my worth without diminishing others. She paused, her voice breaking. I want to learn how to be like you, Mom. Not like Dad. I stood and moved to sit beside her on the sofa, taking her hand in mine. You don't have to be like either of us, Amanda. You just have to be yourself, the best version of yourself. The woman you would have become if you hadn't been so busy trying to prove something. I don't even know who that is anymore. Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time. One honest conversation at a time. One choice at a time. She leaned her head on my shoulder, the way she used to when she was little and tired after a day at the beach. I missed you, Mom. I didn't realize how much until right now, but I missed you so much. I was always here, sweetheart. I never left. We stayed like that for a long time, mother and daughter, finding our way back to each other across the years of distance and misunderstanding. Later, after more tea and some of the lemon cookies I'd baked that morning, Amanda asked about the beach house. Do you want to see it one more time? I asked. before we sell it for real. She nodded, something flickering in her eyes. Would you come with me? Of course, that afternoon. We drove together to the coast. The beach house stood where it always had, white shutters gleaming in the afternoon sun, the ocean stretching endlessly beyond it. It was beautiful. It had always been beautiful. We walked through the rooms together, and I told her stories she'd forgotten or never known. The kitchen where I taught her to make pancakes, always letting her flip them even when she made a mess. The living room where we did dance parties on rainy days. The back porch where her father and I used to sit in the evenings, back when we still talked to each other, sharing dreams and making plans. It was happy here once, wasn't it? Amanda asked, standing in what used to be her childhood bedroom. Very happy. For a long time. And then it wasn't. But that doesn't erase the happiness that came before. She turned to look at me. Do you regret it? Any of it? I regret the pain, the betrayal, the years I spent making myself smaller to make him comfortable. But I don't regret the marriage, because it gave me you. And I don't regret the divorce, because it gave me myself back. We stood on the beach as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The waves rolled in steadily, eternal and unconcerned with human drama. Amanda said quietly, I promise I'm going to do better. Be better. Not for Dad's memory or for the business or for anyone else. For me. And for you. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. That's all I've ever wanted, sweetheart. For you to be happy and whole and true to yourself. As we walked back to the car, Amanda asked one more question. What made you finally transfer the house into your name? What gave you the courage? I smiled, remembering the day 15 years ago when I'd walked into Patricia Chen's office, scared but determined. I realized that protecting myself wasn't the same as being vindictive, that planning for my future wasn't giving up on my marriage, it was honoring myself. Your father had made his choices. I deserved to make mine, and you waited all this time to tell me. I waited for you to be ready to understand. Love isn't just about being there in the good times, Amanda. It's about being patient enough to wait through the hard times, wise enough to know when to speak and when to stay silent, and strong enough to keep the door open even when someone has walked away from you. We sold the beach house 3 months later. A young couple with 2 small children bought it, and I liked knowing that its walls would hold new laughter, new memories, new love, true to her word. Amanda helped me establish the Dorothy Hayes Foundation for Women in Transition. We rented a small office, hired a counselor and a lawyer, and started helping women who felt trapped and invisible find their way to independence and dignity. My daughter and I have coffee every Tuesday morning now. She's softening, slowly learning to value kindness over conquest, connection over control. She's dating a teacher, a quiet man who makes her laugh and doesn't need her to be anyone but herself and me. I'm still Dorothy Hayes, still 73, still learning and growing and choosing joy over bitterness every single day. The house that held so many memories is gone now, but the lessons it taught me remain. Sometimes love looks like patience, sometimes strength looks like silence, and sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the space to find their own way home. My daughter found her way back to me, and in doing so, she found herself. That's not revenge, that's redemption. And it's so much sweeter than I ever imagined.